Alright, people, midweek report time. Back on a Wednesday for a change. I was going to do a live tonight with the Eubank situation, the Eubank versus Liam Smith situation. It's a fight. But things come up today, so I'm going to do a midweek report today. We'll do that tomorrow. And of course, remember, Saturday night, live watch along. Yes, it's probably the last live watch along we'll do. Probably for a couple of weeks, because there's no real big fights that warrant a watch along, to be honest with you. Maybe Canelo, maybe against Charlo, maybe we'll do, but the ones on at that time of the morning are pretty difficult. But we'll see. So last one for a little while, we'll still get the lives in. In terms of some of the boxing news that's been going around, there's been actually a good bit to talk about, already this week. There's some fights being talked about, some fights announced, fights we're going to preview in this video. We'll start with what Frank Warren was saying. So Frank Warren obviously was on TalkSport, and, TalkSport, it amazes me, right, that, look, TalkSport's job, or supposedly their job when they're interviewing people like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, is to call them out when they're being disingenuous. And, Simon Jordan does that with Eddie Hearn. But with Frank Warren, you've Garrett A. Davis, Simon Jordan, they just seem to accept damn near everything he says, right? And they just, give him carte blanche. And Frank Warren was saying that, I'll talk more about the Dubois situation, but he said on Monday that he's actually trying to get Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk for next year. He says that talks are still ongoing, but he wants to get the Daniel Dubois fight either moved to a no contest, which is unlikely, or he'll get an immediate rematch ordered, which again, I think is unlikely. Now, Eddie Hearn recently gave an interview where he talked about the fact that Filip Hrgovic, he expects the IBF at some point this week. It's only Wednesday, so it could still happen. But he expects him some point this week to order their mandatory, which is, of course, Filip Hrgovic. He's been mandatory now for a while now. And Hrgovic has insisted that he won't be taking step-aside money. Now, I've done a video on this already, gave my 2 cents on it. And, we've heard fighters in the past say, I won't take step aside. And then when they see the amount they can make, because to me, it's a no-brainer. You might want your title shot. You might feel it's the right time. I know that's what Tunde's thinking was. Obviously, they didn't take step aside. They're making good money, I think, as well to fight Sergey Kovalev anyway. But they obviously thought that was their best chance to get a world title, because if they let Kovalev fight Canelo, they ain't going to beat Canelo. They would have made a big payday, but they weren't going to be. They probably wouldn't have made crazy money. They would have made a couple of mil, but not like baseball numbers. But going in as a champion, yeah, they could have made a fair bit. But for the most part, they tend to take it. Lennox Lewis did that. Callum Smith's done it. A fair few fighters have done it over the years. And it just lets unification / undisputed fights happen. There's no issues. Obviously, they will call the mandatory straight away. So that's why you often hear people say when they win undisputed, they won't be long undisputed, because mandatories come just knocking left, right and centre, because a lot of the time it's put on hold to let unification and undisputed happen. Hrgovic is saying he won't take step aside. I reckon if he sees the amount that will be put forth to him, he probably would, because it's not like he has to take the step aside money and then he's banned from fighting or anything like that. Now, he can have interim fights if he wants. He can take the step aside money and still fight and get paid by Hearn and Wasserman. So it's in Hrgovic's interest, and he's guaranteed the shot unless he loses, of course. But I would imagine they wouldn't take massive risks with him. So that's the situation there. If he doesn't take the step aside, they will obviously order Oleksandr Usyk versus Filip Hrgovic. And then obviously you have to remember that we have he's on the undercard, but we have the Joy Zhang fight coming up now in a couple of weeks' time. And obviously the winner of that is interim champion. They'll be mandated to fight Oleksandr Usyk. They're both with Queensberry and Frank Warren, so he's definitely going to push to get that mandatory called. He's got a good relationship with the WBO. They will call that mandatory, definitely. So Oleksandr Usyk, as much as we want to see undisputed, we all do, it's going to be difficult. Now, you could say vacate and just, if the Fury fight comes about, but you do kind of want to see it for undisputed as well. There hasn't been one in a long time. And, as I said in the video I did, we're in this mess with all these mandatories is because Tyson Fury ducked the fight this year. They were all the sanctioning bodies agreed, right, we'll let it go if you can make the undisputed fight. The WBA were top of the queue. They couldn't. Obviously, Fury priced himself out, moved the goalposts. WBA gets called, IBS about to get called, WBO is going to get called. WBC haven't called any yet, which is why Fury can just do what he wants. They will eventually, I would imagine. I wouldn't be shocked if they announced that Joshua versus Wilder, if that fight happens now in January, would be a final eliminator, which, Wilder being number one ranked by the W, I think he's number one ranked, having fought once since 2021. Pretty crazy, but that is sanctioning bodies for you. Someone asked me, who's the least, who's the best out of them? And you'd say it's between the WBO and the IBF, but they themselves have made, questionable decisions. But the WBA and WBC, they really are a law unto themselves, those two. The WBO do questionable things. They are very, and I know Al Heyman at PPC were having beef with this a couple of years ago, that they are very pro Top Rank and pro Frank Warren, but you could say the same about the WBC being very pro PBC. Seems like all the PBC fighters fight for that belt. So there's no sanctioning body that is perfect, far from it, but the IBF and WBO are amazing compared to the other two. They really are. Now, obviously, we want to see Fury Usyk. Look, I tried to be hopeful all year this year, and it's not done me anything. So I'm just going to say, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see if any news comes. We'll watch it when we see some more news come. We'll wait and see. We're not going to get hopeful. We're not going to get optimistic. We're not going to be doom and gloom about it. We're just going to just wait is the best thing we could probably say about that. Eddie Hearn also said that Billy Joe Saunders is hopeful to make a return to the ring in December. I already talked about this in a separate video. Billy Joe, yeah, look, I gave my 2 cents on it. I talked about it, in a video, and I would be amazed if Billy Joe comes back. He's got anything really left. I'd love to know what weight he's going to be fighting at, because he's probably going to be, he's going to be cutting down from a serious weight. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what happens. In terms of him coming back, going with Eddie Hearn, you would imagine it's probably because, Eddie Hearn, out of the promoters in the UK, he's probably going to pay Billy Joe the most money. And Eddie Hearn has the prospects in the States like Berlanga, Diego Porcello, or Porchera, however you pronounce that last name. Thank you to the people in the chat, because I completely forgot his name. Thank you to the people in the comment section for reminding me. An incredibly talented super middleweight. Very, very talented. I knew he was the worst thing is I knew his opponent's name, but I didn't know his name, or I couldn't come to me. Very talented super middleweight. Yeah, if I was Eddie Hearn, I'd be actually thinking okay, there you go, Billy Joe in with them. So makes sense, and I'm sure he'd offer Billy Joe a decent incentive, probably more than Warren or Ben Shalom would, to get in there. So that is the situation with Billy Joe. I can't envision Billy Joe doing much, as I said, at this point, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Now, I seen this, right? And I genuinely thought people were trolling when they were telling me this, right? And it's not really boxing news per se, but it's just bizarre. It's the only way I can describe it. So obviously Manchester City were playing Sheffield United the other day, and Erling Haaland, who, although he plays for City, he is a phenomenal striker. I mean, if you wanted to mould the perfect striker, you'd get something akin to Erling Haaland. You really would. He scored a goal for City, and a fan came over the rails to celebrate. Now, obviously, that fan was escorted out pretty quick, but it actually came out that was Terry Flanagan. Remember Terry Flanagan, the WBO lightweight champion, who was champion? I don't think he ever lost that title. He vacated it to move up and fight Maurice Hooker on the undercard of Fury versus what was his name? Another one's gone. The guy he made his comeback against. The guy, Sefa Safiri, was that his name? That one in Manchester when he made his comeback in 2018. Yeah, that Terry Flanagan jumped the rails. He has been missing in action for the last 4 years. He had his last fight on that promotional company, the one, on one of their IFL shows. You remember when they were putting shows on IFL? And that was back in 2019. I think it was October, November time. He's not done anything since then. Now, Terry Flanagan, as WBO lightweight champion, he was promoted by Frank Warren. He didn't really, he was just there. It was weird. He was kind of just the champion that was just there. Anthony Crolla was WBA champion as well during the time as well, and it was just Flanagan was just there. He didn't really set the world alight, and he's not that old, Terry Flanagan. I think he's only in his early 30s. So right now he's jumping railings at football matches, and he'll probably get a ban for that. I don't know how strict City are, but I know some places take that real serious if you start jumping railings and stuff like that and coming on the pitch, having a pitch invasion. So Terry Flanagan, WBO champion, he's now got his second claim to fame. Well done. I know it probably be like, gee, really? I just couldn't believe it when I was reading. I genuinely thought people were trolling me. I got a couple of people message me and they were like, this happened. I was like, what? I was like, what? And then it's like, actually, yeah, it really was Terry Flanagan. And you're like, okay, that's strange. There's something I can say. That's strange. Fair play, I guess, if you want to call it that. I see here Michaela Meyer is having her say on Alicia Baumgartner's positive drug test she failed a couple of weeks ago, and she said it's obviously very disappointing. You always wonder, how long has she been doing that? Was this the first time, or was it the first time she got caught? I feel sorry for her. This is her legacy now. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's obviously not ideal for Alicia Baumgartner, but obviously Michaela Meyer is sore because of look, I'm no great liker of Michaela Meyer. I'm not. I don't think she's as good as she thinks she is. But to be fair, I felt she beat Alicia Baumgartner. To be fair, I did feel she won that. So I can understand where her grievance comes from. It's like, do you remember when DAZN, remember when Katie Taylor fought Amanda Serrano in MSG, right? And do you remember, I still just couldn't understand why DAZN did this, right? And to this day, I just like, why would you do this? And they got Jessica McCaskill, who does not like Katie Taylor. Does not like Katie Taylor in the slightest to commentate. And it was like, she's going to be completely pro Serrano. She does not like her. I just thought that was funny, because you just knew, like she does not like Katie Taylor in the slightest. Why is she? She's the worst person to commentate on this fight, because everything Amanda Serrano does, she's going to amplify it. I just found that one funny. I really did. And with Michaela Meyer doesn't like Alicia Baumgartner. Obviously, they didn't like each other going into the fight. So she is not going to be... And look, we know, that's not to say Alicia Baumgartner, didn't pop dirty. She did with that drug-free sport. But to go as far as saying it ruins her legacy... Look, Tyson Fury has failed the test. Canelo Alvarez has failed the test. Has it ruined their legacy? No. I think it only... If you're multiple, like Jarrell Miller, not that he had much of a legacy, but like, he's a repeat offender. So with him, his nickname in the ring is Big Baby Miller, but I call him Big Farmer Miller because this guy is literally a walking pharmaceutical. I mean, this isn't like someone who's, failed a couple of times because it's like, for God's sake, you're not watching what you're eating or stuff. This guy is testing positive for loads of stuff. It's not like it's just one thing. He's testing positive. My guy is testing positive for loads of stuff. I mean, I think he even said he doesn't know how those substances for the Joshua fight got in. And I think one of them you had to physically inject. I mean, like that scene out of Family Guy, I don't know how it got in. This doesn't feel like wet gloves. Oh, it's not. Alright, that explains how it got in. Remember that scene of Family Guy where the doctor puts his hand in the gloves and he's like, it doesn't feel like gloves. Oh, it's the needles. Yeah. That's literally what Jarrell Miller was claiming. That's kind of, well, not like that obviously, but that's the kind of the excuse he was coming up with. So that's the situation there. Hearn has said that he is working on the final steps for Prograis versus Haney. They are looking to secure a venue and a date. Alright. Haney versus Prograis. I did see Bill Haney has been talking about Shakur Stevenson as well. Obviously, we want to see that fight. I'll see it here. He was on the Boxing Voice. He's declared Shakur Stevenson said he wants 50-50 to challenge Haney in response to their 75-25 offer. There's no precedent where you're undisputed and you give 50-50 to the challenger. As good as Shakur Stevenson is, he really, he's looking to fight Haney for undisputed, and you're asking for 50-50? Nah, man, I think you need to go. Now, I can see where you're coming from, saying 75-25 is low, and it is. Shakur Stevenson, I think, is worth more than that. But 50-50, nah, man. I like Shakur. I think he's a tremendous fighter, but I can't, they're not going to give you 50-50. I mean, you may as well just not even bother. It's like, they're never going to agree to that. No way. So, Daniel Dubois was also on TalkSport during this week. And, obviously there's still the fallout from the low blow controversy. Some people are adamant that it was a legit shot and that it should have been scored, and that Daniel Dubois, as I say, if is a big word, if the referee had administered a count, God knows what Oleksandr Usyk would have done. You know, for me, I've said it once, I'll say it again. For me, I think Usyk is lucky he didn't call it a knockdown, to be honest with you, because it did look borderline. But I definitely can understand where some people are saying it was straight and low, and it did look like that originally. When I looked at it on the replay, I was like, it's borderline, you know. I really don't. The referee, at the end of the day, has to make, and this is the thing you need to remember, the referee has to make a split decision like that. And if he sees a fighter signaling that it's low, he's not in an amazing position to look at it. He is literally going to go 2 plus 2, right, is low. Right? You know, mistakes happen, you know, they really do. And sometimes knockdowns are called. You know, there have been plenty of instances where knockdowns have been called when they really shouldn't have been called, or sometimes the punch didn't even land. And the judges, the referee calls it a knockdown. The judges have to score it around 10-8. There's nothing you can do. You have to go by what the referee ruled. A good example would be, look at Joseph Parker versus Dillian Whyte in the second round. Joseph Parker was winning that round clearly. He lost the round 10-8 because it was not even a punch, it was a headbutt that put Joseph Parker down. It was clear as anyone, it was a headbutt. Shouldn't have been called a knockdown. But the referee was in poor position. He ruled it a knockdown, a 10-8 round, which shouldn't have been a 10-8 round. It should have been a Joseph Parker round. And some would argue that cost Joseph Parker the fight. It happens. You know, sometimes the referee gets it right, they get it wrong. Other times it's just such a grey area. You're kind of like, well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you rule it a legit shot, there's going to be people saying it's low. If you rule it low, you're going to be saying it's a legit shot. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't with that. You know, Louis Pabon is normally a good referee. Normally is pretty good. He's had his moments, like against Povetkin, against Klitschko, where he just seemed to forget everything about about refereeing and the rules in boxing. With that out of the way, with that one, other than that, he's been good. Dubois also said on people saying he quit, which he did. He said, I looked at my corner, they said, wait and get up. I got up, I didn't quit, I was ready to continue. It didn't look like that to me. It literally looked like he was hoping to kind of meet the referee at 9.5 so he'd wave it off. And that way it gives you plausible deniability. The shot looked hard, it did. It was a big stiff jab. But realistically, like, Dubois has done this before. And, you know, that's that. He hasn't got the hunger for battle. He's not got the... Look, Daniel Dubois is, as a fighter, he's not bad. He's not terrible. Certainly not. He's got to a decent level. He was very competitive against Oleksandr Usyk. Even though he was losing, he was a lot. He never seemed out of his depth until kind of near the end, even though he was losing rounds. He doesn't have that fighter's spirit. He's a fighter, but he doesn't have the fighter's spirit, is probably the best way. Now, sometimes that fighter spirit can be to your detriment. You know, you could take too much punishment in your career and you sound like, you're not like that. You sound like Tommy Hearns. But sometimes you do need it. At least to just pull you through a somewhat tough fight that you can still maybe salvage. It wasn't like we were in the 10th, the 11th, the 12th round, like where there was only like 3 minutes to go. There was still plenty of time in this fight. You know? So that's what I got to say on that. Warren has also declared that he's appealing. He said they have a stack of evidence and want the result overturned to a no contest, but will accept the worst case scenario as a rematch. Good luck with that, Frank. Loads of evidence. Okie dokie. Let's see. Now, Andy Ruiz, right, has made an Instagram post and he is called Deontay Wilder. I'm not going to use the full abbreviation. An effing begins with a P, right? And names his price to fight him, 10 million. Tell him to pay me what I deserve. 10 million Andy Ruiz is looking for. Wow. 10 million. I mean, damn. Right. I wouldn't envision him getting anywhere close to that unless the fight is being funded by the Saudis. For Deontay Wilder, he might make a couple of mil in the low mil, but 10 mil, that fight would never recoup that. No way. That does lend a bit of credence to, I think it was Frank Warren who said that Tyson Fury claimed that Ruiz, when they tried to make the Ruiz fight, he was looking for something like 20 million, which is completely, like, that's more than he got for at least the first AJ fight. Maybe not the second one, but the first one definitely. I mean, Ruiz isn't worth that. Not at this point in his career. I mean, he's been very inactive over the last couple of years. So that's one occasion where, based upon that video Ruiz uploaded, you probably say, actually, to be fair, he was asking for 20 mil against Tyson Fury. It's one of the few times we'd actually believe something that he's been coming out with. So Canelo Alvarez has now confirmed that he is open to a potential fight with Terence Crawford after Crawford said he'd be willing to move up to super middleweight. You never know in boxing. It's possible, why not? If it makes sense, I'm down to do it. Of course he is. I mean, you've got a welterweight moving up, what, 3 divisions? More? Yeah, 3? Is it 3? Yeah, 3 divisions to face Canelo at his natural weight. As good as Crawford is, and he is very good, very, very good, that just wouldn't... There comes a point where your skill just cannot get you past it. Someone is just too big. And especially if they're big, they're not equally as skilled, but they're still skilled. You know, it just got to be a bridge too far. It would do a lot of money, I reckon. It'd probably do good numbers, based upon especially how Crawford looked against Spence. He's been a bit more mainstream now. He's been on Joe Rogan and stuff like that. But, yeah, I wouldn't be putting money on him beating Canelo. You know, even if we're not talking about a peak Canelo, probably fair to say, maybe not at his athletic peak, but at his weight, 168 pounds, nah, Crawford ain't. I can't see it. I can't see it. You know, part of the 3-fight deal with PBC, some were believing it was going to go Charlo, Spence, and Benavidez. Or maybe Benavidez, Spence, whatever order, if Spence beat Crawford. Who's to say Crawford won't be the third fight? Or won't just take Spence's place and get the Canelo fight? Who knows? Eddie Hearn has revealed that Conor Benn return to the ring is now being targeted for either the 23rd of September, that's going to be on a show in Florida, or on September the 30th, a show in London, depending on whether or not the British Boxing Board will allow him in the UK while the UK case is ongoing. I would imagine not in the UK. Now, they have tried to take Conor Benn to other parts of the world, you know, Dubai, I think they were talking about Australia at one point. I know some of the states, Nevada and California, said, no, you're not fighting here. Not quite like that, but you get me. And I don't know, I could be just, maybe that's Eddie Hearn wishful thinking, but I'd be surprised if we see, I'm not saying we won't, but I'd be surprised if we see Conor Benn, maybe even this year, but certainly as soon as September. I mean, September is literally coming. So 1st September is this Friday, so could be a bit of wishful thinking from Eddie Hearn there. But interestingly enough here, according to Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn has revealed that he has now started talks with VADA about potentially creating Matchroom's own equivalent to the WBC Clean Boxing program, which would see all Matchroom fighters sign up to random VADA testing 365 days a year. That could go one of two ways. That could cause a lot of shows to be cancelled pretty damn quick. That could cause issues. Now, obviously, it's a good thing in one sense if it cleans things up, but I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea as well for a promoter to be working so close with a testing agency like that. I think that realistically, drug testing agencies, they should work with all the promoters. They should be independent. They shouldn't be as in, like, you know, having their own Matchroom Clean Boxing program, because everything is open to corruption. That's what we'll say on that. In terms of everything else, there's some fights being talked about. You know, Pat McCormick, I'm seeing here, there's rumours that he's actually going to fight Troy Williamson. Wow, that's very soon in his career. Fight not complete, but November 11th in Middlesbrough, what am I saying? Newcastle. So that's interesting. That's a really interesting fight. If that does happen, that's a really, really interesting fight. Alright, because Pat McCormick is up and coming, but yeah, that's really, really, really interesting if that happens. I don't really see much else. You know, the main kind of talking point is, of course, going to be Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith this weekend. I've already given my 2 cents on that fight. I've given my pick. Pretty much done everything I can on that fight. Who I think will win, why I think will win. In terms of the undercard as well, it's by Sky standards as of late. It's not a bad undercard, to be fair. It's okay. You know, I mean, it's good enough. Pay-per-view worthy, probably no. Just no. But better than some of the other cards we've seen, which shows how bad some of the cards have been on Sky. They've really been poor. But the main event, looking forward to it. Like I said, we're doing a live watch along for it, so that is the situation there. Other than that, I think that's all we really can do here, because there's not really much else breaking. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We've got a lot in this. I'm surprised with you, because I think we've got well over 20. We had to take a few takes, as you can probably tell by the things, people coming to the door and stuff like that. Sorry about that. It's not all in one go, but we do what we can. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I will talk to you. I hope you all have a great day, wherever you are in the world, whatever time you're watching this at. Peace.